Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle powered by PGC Basketball. We believe in the value of a coach. We're here to educate, empower, and encourage you to lead like never before. This week, we discuss what it means to have no excuses as a coach and focus on nothing else this offseason except getting better by finding creative solutions to your problems and overcoming any obstacle you may encounter in coaching. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle. In today's episode, we're going to go a little unbridled here. We might even get a little bit aggressive in this episode. This episode is no excuses. And we're going to talk about the excuses coaches make and the things that are holding them back. And I feel a little bit of passion about this one because, I think a lot of times when we do our episodes, we kind of just talk about this might help you, this might help you. Now we're actually going to come at you a little bit harder and say, this is actually what's hurting you. And this is what you need to change. Like, get over it, figure it out. No more excuses. You got to move forward. Before we jump into the episode, coaches, I want to encourage you, if you enjoy the show, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with other people. We don't ask this very often, but we would love for you to share with other people, especially we're coming up on our 500th episode. And we want to continue just to grow the audience and have an impact in the game. We can't do that if everybody keeps it a secret. So we would love for you to share it with your friends and people you think that might benefit from it. But today, Sam and Lisa and myself are going to jump in to no excuses. And look, I'll start with you, Sam, and I want to know, like, what is an excuse you think coaches make? And what is one of those things that they just aren't getting better at that's holding them back? I mean, every coach wants to tap out in their career. Like, they want to get as good as they can. And a lot of times I just think we don't have the right formula. We don't have the right ideas. We don't have the right level of commitment, or I don't know what it is. There's just something missing. Everybody's got something different. So what are some excuses you see coaches making that are holding them back from being great? Because even though it's harsh, no excuses, at the end of the day, this episode's about you being great. And we're going to challenge you a little bit.
Yeah, one of the most common is I don't have good enough players, or my players, aren't committed. My players are soft. It's a throw it on the players, what my players don't do, who they are, who they've always been. I live in this community. I coach at this school. I don't have the resources, or the players and the families aren't committed, or I lose them all to another sport. Sure, there's some reality and some truth in some of that. But that's where I'll start with it is coaches are quick to put excuses and blame and shame on the players.
Yeah. Lisa, what about you?
Well, that was mine. So thanks, Sam. I think that's honestly, that's the biggest one I've heard in my career, is just that they're not tough enough. Why can't they, handle the ball better? Why can't they play defense better? Why don't they care about defense? Why don't we, show up with a more competitive mindset? They don't like to. I think the competing one is a big one. Obviously, I've been coaching women for a long time, and that one's it looks a little bit different on our side, and so a lot of times we want the perfect looking competitor. And it's different, and it's you got to cultivate it. I know Sam's going to say you got to teach it. It's like a skill. And a lot of times we just show up, wow, we don't compete. And so how do we get them there? I think we have to, I know what we're going to talk about, the solutions to these things too.
Yeah, one of the things that since we're just kind of speaking and we're just kind of saying, I see this a lot in coaches, is that they think they're good enough. And that bothers me because, I step back from it and I've had a ton of success as a coach. But there's one thing that burns inside of me on the regular, is that I'm not good enough. Like, I just feel like I'm not good enough at what I do. I've got to get better. And I think there's a lot of times when coaches, and I think sometimes when you blame it on your players, it goes back to you think you're really good and they're not good enough. Now, look, I know players make a big difference. I know that you can add or give a ton of the credit in my success to players. I'm the first one to do that. But at the end of the day, if you just think it's their fault, that assumes that you're good enough. And I just think that's a really bad assumption to have. I think that you're not good enough. I don't even know who's listening, but I just know this: you're not good enough. And I know that sounds really hard, but at the end of the day, you might be really good at what you do, but you can get better. And I really think sometimes coaches just don't go after growth enough. They don't just try and figure out, like, every year, I've said this 1,000 times, Mike Neighbors was speaking at one of our clinics, and I don't remember what it was, but remember he talked about, he wrote down like 300 or 400 or 500 things he did bad that previous season, right? And he's a really good coach, but there's hundreds of things that he would have done different that he didn't do well. I've done the same thing in my career, and every year it's in the hundreds. I'm not talking about 3 or 4 things I would have changed. I'm talking about hundreds of things I would have done better. And we talked about this also. Sometimes, just humility and self-awareness is a superpower for you going to where you need to get. And I think there is a lot of coaches being held back from being great, using excuses because they're just not good enough. And I don't want, look, I know that's not the tone we usually use. We're not trying to say you suck, right? Like that's not where we're going. It's really just a challenge to coaches. You can get better.
TJ, I think that it's so true. And I don't know why we kind of stick to what we know. And I think that's where our comfort zone is if we branch out and fail, or if we waste time trying to do the drill a little bit different or teach a little bit different. But I think all of those things of experimenting and going out there and saying, like, trying it on and like, hey, does this fit me? Does this fit my program? Does this fit my staff? How can I, start the conversation? And I think that's just a big part of it, is really having an open mindset to how can we get better. And as a group, as your coaching staff, I think that those are some of the best people to help you because they know the situation you're in and they're in it with you. And that's when you can get in a room and throw things out the wall and see what sticks, and be committed to being like, we have to try something new just because it's going to make us better no matter what. And so I love that process. I think that's we can't be afraid to fail. We can't be afraid to be vulnerable in front of our team. Because again, it shows that we're asking them to be vulnerable every day in practice, to push beyond their limits. And so we need to model that. And I think that's part of the reason why players don't sometimes, is because they see coaches playing it safe. And so they play it safe.
I would add too to what you said, TJ, and build off that, Lisa, is like, coaches are hypocrites. We're some of the biggest hypocrites on planet Earth, and we can't give away what we don't possess. And what I mean is, we ask our players to be coachable, and the coaches who coach kids the hardest and have the highest demand sometimes, do not have that same approach as a coach. I think of a guy in our PGC coaching membership, Wayne Johnson, who's been coaching 50 years, and he shows up on our live learning calls, and he's still getting better. He's coached 20 plus years at the high school, 20 plus years at the college level, and still getting better. When we do our PGC clinics and seeing guys that have won multiple state championships and just won one, and they're showing up to our early bird and they're just grinding to get better and better. Well, to me, it's real easy to see why those coaches have so much success, because to your point, TJ, they don't think they're good enough. They still haven't arrived. We're all trying to we're all becoming a better version. And the coaches who get complacent and just do what they've always done and stop asking the questions and stop being coachable, those are the ones that stop growing. And then it's time to hang it up. And you see the great ones that keep striving and growing and thriving.
One of the reasons, for those of you that don't know the evolution of like some things we've done within PGC basketball, one of the reasons we started a business, PGC Coaching, is because we saw a lot of players going back and struggling to actually grow into who they needed to be and what would be best for them and their team, because coaches squashed that a little bit. We recognized that coaches needed some help in that area too. And if I'm being really transparent, peeling back the curtain a little bit, it's funny to me. Like, I don't think coaches know what coaches need. I think there's a lot of people. I think this would be true in most lines of business, most jobs. Most of the time people think they know what they need, but they don't know what they actually need. And so what are coaches searching for? They're searching for this quick hitter offense or defense or play that's going to solve everything for them. But then there's a reality to it. Like, well, if you haven't developed your players enough, doesn't matter how good your players are, they get that shot, they're not going to make it. If you're not a good enough teacher to go in there and explain the little things that go into actually making that play work and getting player buy-in, it's still probably not going to work. If you don't even have a level of relationship and engagement with your players, that offensive play may work, but they're not going to have enough energy and passion on the defensive end. Like, I could go on and on about all of these other things. And there's one that comes to mind for me. I don't know if you guys have been watching the NCAA tournament, but like this Jerome Tang from Kansas State, I mean, how legit is this guy? Like, I'm ready to suit up and go play. Like, I really love hearing him and watching him love on his players the way that he does. Like, it's one of those things. And if we were to press pause, and I think I'm really good at loving on my players, but the minute I watch him, I realize, oh my gosh, I got a long ways to go. And when I think about like the coaches that are on here, are we even looking at that stuff? Like, how invested are your players? How good are you at selling them the vision that they buy into? How good are you at actually teaching them the little things? Do you even have a relationship where they want to learn from you? Like, I could go on and on about these things, but I think this is the things that coaches are missing. Like, could you become a better speaker in front of people? Could you be more precise in your language? Could you find ways to inspire players? We could go on and on about these, and I could give you 100 of these things, but these are the type of things that I think are actually holding coaches back. And I'd give you one more example. I remember a long time ago, not a long time ago, but a while back, and I still do, I get these emails about read and react offense, and they're asking me, hey, do I need to do this, this, and this, or what about this? And they ask me a bunch of questions. And when I get done reading the email, I think to myself, listen, I love the read and react. It's a great offense, and I think this could really help you. But by the way they're saying everything, asking everything, and they're loving it, I realize they got bigger problems than their offense. And I feel a little bit sad because I'm not sure they realize they have bigger problems than their offense. And when we think about it as a coach in totality, we love to make excuses when we're not good enough. But when we get better, we find solutions. That's what coaches do. And I think coaches are problem solvers that need to find solutions and give less excuses. And I think that that's the encouragement of this show today is like, what are you doing to actually find solutions versus just complain about it?
Yeah, and when you fall short, owning it. Not enough coaches own it and apologize and acknowledge it in front of their players. I just had to do this on earlier this week. Coached a tournament all weekend, and I was coaching our younger group, 6th and 7th grade kids, and I got too competitive. The competitive nature of the game became it engulfed me. I'm very competitive, and I wasn't as good of a teacher. I wasn't as good as focusing on development. I got too enamored, too caught up in the competitive nature, and I went into the tournament telling our guys like, "Hey, it's time to go get better." And it is. It's like remove the pressure of winning. They played school ball all year, and then you jump in this, and I want them to feel like good pressure to go perform, but I made it too pressure packed in terms of competitiveness where I didn't think as a coach and a leader I was focused on developing them, and so I had to go own it. And so I think that's another piece to it when you fall short of your own commitments, which by the way, if you're not falling short, then you must not have any commitments. Like I fall short every day, husband, father, man, coach, everything. Like, and so you got to own it. And I think that's another piece that coaches miss on.
Yeah, a big part of that, Sam, is the commitments and what are you committed to doing and changing and being better at next year. And I was actually just thinking about that same thing. And you can be really specific about, I want to teach better. Okay, so what are you committed to doing this off season to be able to be a better teacher of the game? Or I want to teach better in practice. And then when you get those things, you're implementing them and you're holding yourself accountable to teaching better. And so I think nailing those down and committing to them obviously gives something for our fellow coaches or players to hold us accountable to. And then again, what are you going to hold your players accountable to? What are they committed to? I think that's really important. Instead of, just talking at them about, hey, this is what we're going to be about as a team. What do they want to be about as a team? What are they committed to as individually and as a group? I think that's a big one to take a step forward. And one of the things I was thinking about for myself was just watching more film with players and why I didn't do that this year and how I could have done that better, and how we can have so many excuses for not watching film. But I know when Dustin was on, how TJ, you talked about, like, it could be 2 clips, and you could send 1 clip every night to your team to say, this is how we're going to get better. Here's, you have a narrow focus, and they're getting to see it, and you send it to them, in an email, on their phones, whatever that is, rather than having all the excuses of why we can't meet in a classroom, or we don't have time before or after practice, or we don't have the equipment, and we don't have this, we don't have that. Well, if we want to get better and we know we can use film, start at the simplest and single focused place where we can say, let's create the narrative. This is the thing we're getting better at this week. I'm going to send you 1 clip every day about that. And again, hopefully your team's committed to getting better, so they're committed to watching it. And then you can talk about it before practice. So I don't know. I think those are, again, some solutions that we can find to some of the excuses, like we can't watch film, we don't have the time, we don't have the place, and things like that.
Yeah. And don't is such a bad word in coaching, right? Like don't, can't, won't, like just like be a problem solver, figure it out, like find a way, like there's something you can do. Maybe you can't do X, but you can do Y. And sometimes we don't do Y because we couldn't do X. Nobody said you couldn't do Y, but they're just this other one. So when I think about this as coaches, like on their journey to be great. Another thing I think that we don't really verbalize this excuse, but I think it's one of the ones that we keep in our head. Like coaching's out there in front of people. And so I think a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this, just like all of us have, coaching from a place of pride, coaching from a place of just like, this is who I am. Like I could do this at any level. I mean, I could say, okay, at a college level, you're not winning. What do? You get rid of all your players. Yeah, I know players go in the transfer portal, but coaches get rid of them all the time too, right? Let's just say you're not winning at a younger level. You just say, well, our players just aren't good enough, and you make that excuse. And we all have an excuse. We all have a reason that it's not working out, that it's not going well. But we do a lot of that from a place of pride, where we're concerned what everybody else is thinking. I think if you want to be a great coach, you have really got to make it an inside job. You've got to challenge yourself. Like, am I doing as well as I can in connecting with players? Am I building a good culture? Am I teaching at a high level? Am I learning at a high level? Am I bringing great energy? Like, what are the things that you're capable of doing? And you got to be able to put your head down at night and rest easy, because what you talked about a second ago, you're living up to the things you're committed to. And then maybe next year your commitments grow. But so many times I think that we are so enamored or so pressurized, the environment is so pressurized by everybody else, because we do work in a society where I can already tell you what's going to happen, right? Like there's going to be people that don't like the job you're doing, but we're still out there trying to people please. One of the best things I think coaches can do is just drop all of that expectation or what other people are thinking, because it is going to let you down. I mean, coaches, alert, be aware. Like, you are not going to please people. You need to be pleasing your own commitments. And those commitments need to be ones that align with making better people and better players.
So TJ, here's what I would say too on that point is, when you talk about the pressure from the outside, I think another thing that happens that coaches make excuses on is the pressure from the outside gets us distracted from what's really going on. And we have to stay true to what we're committed to. And when we do that as coaches and leaders, then we don't lose our eyes on the prize, and we keep our narrow focus on what we're trying to do. And of course, we're trying to win games, but there's also, like, all 3 of us on this call, we all have different areas that we're trying to take a team to or develop them in a certain way. And sometimes we let the outside noise, the outside pressure, again, whether you're coaching at the highest level, you're coaching small college basketball, you're coaching, travel at middle, whatever level, there's going to be outside pressure and outside noise. And I think that distracts us, and then we start making excuses, and we get away from the very thing that we're actually trying to go after.
Here's what I think coaches should do. Like, if we were just to do an activity right now, and coaches, I was to say, and Lisa, Sam, you do this activity with me right here, okay? So just write down a list, and I'm going to ask you for your answers here in a second. Like, what are excuses that you hear coaches make? Like what, just write down 3 or 4 things that, we're all around coaches on the regular basis of, I don't like this, or this is holding us back, or we weren't as good because of this. Like what are some ones that you hear? And then just popcorn. Once you've written one down, Lisa, why don't you share one? And then Sam, you go. Let's just get 3 or 4 down here on the list. Go ahead, Lisa. What's one you got?
We're not big enough.
We're not big enough. Okay. Sam, what's one you got?
My parents are getting in the way.
Okay. So parents complain. Yep. Go ahead. Lisa, you got another one?
I don't have great assistant coaches.
Okay. And Sam, you got one more for me?
My administration.
So here's another challenge for coaches. So here's what I do. Write down all of the things that didn't go well this year that held you back from being great. All right. And then when you write those down, I want you to just cross it out and write down below it the actual solution for it. Like, you know what? Let's just take one that we weren't big enough. Okay. I'm going to cross that out. And the solution is we're going to be the best small ball team in the country. So I need to dive into that, because you can win in small ball. FDU just did in the tournament playing teams. So we know teams do it. We know teams that aren't big win. So the solution is I'm going to become an expert on playing small ball. Okay. So then we go to the next one and we say parents. And so I'm going to cross that one out. And the solution is for the parents there is I'm just going to have a mind shift. I'm not going to allow any parent to take any of my energy, any of my joy, and I'm just going to be passionate about coaching. I'm just going to assume parents are idiots, and I'm just going to write them off because that's the way they are. I'm not saying that's the right solution, but let's just say that's the solution. So now you made a new commitment, like we just talked about, right? I committed to not letting parents take any of my joy of coaching the game of basketball. All right, so now you're ready to move forward with them. That one's off there. Okay, assistant coaches. My assistants aren't any good. They don't help. They don't whatever. Well, you know what? I got 1 or 2, so I'm going to go sit down. Here's the solution. I'm going to have a talk with them. I need you to be great, or I need you to be gone. And if we can't be, then what am I going to do? I'm going to train up some players to play a little bit bigger role where they've got to handle a little bit of leadership and a little bit whatever. So I'm going to use my players as leaders because we don't have a lot of assistants. So you got a solution now, and we could go on and on and on. And so coaches, just the awareness of like, hey, I can find a solution to this problem. And at the end of the day, if you're like, all right, we're not big enough, there's no solution. My assistants suck, there's no solution. Parents, they're horrible. It's going to ruin my year. There's no solution. And I could go on down the list. And it's just like, well, then what? Then what are you going to do? Like, why even coach? You know what I mean? And I hate saying that because we need good coaches out there. We need people that care. We need people that want to do a really good job at this. But there's a reality to that. When you do that list, you are either going to find a solution or you are going to repeat the cycle and complain about it again and again and again. And these are big time life decisions, and they happen in your marriage. They happen with your kids. They happen with your team. Like these are big time decisions. And you want to end up on top. And now look, on top means something different for everybody. You know what I mean? Like you probably won 4 games this year and you could have won 8, but because you weren't seeking solutions, you just won 4, and that means something different for everybody. You want to tap out your team to the highest level possible, but go ahead and have yourself a little cry session, write down all the things that are no good and put them on a piece of paper. And then when you're done, take a deep breath, go ahead and start crossing them out and write down the solution. Like those are the way, that is the way that you end up finding the way. And I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but just the whole mind shift. I sometimes get tired on both ends. I get tired of the crap that coaches put up with, right? Parents, administrators, like I'm coaching the AAU for Sam right now. And this whole world's a joke. Like this, like I'm just tired of listening to parents in the stands. I'm tired. Okay. There's moments when I just want to complain about it. Sam and I had this talk where I just want to be like, this is stupid. Like the referees aren't even acting like they care. The parents never have. I'm just deep breath. What am I going to do to be part of the solution? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to give these girls a really energetic, learn how to love your teammate experience. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a part of the solution. It would be super easy to hang out in the complaining world because there is plenty to complain about in the AAU world, but you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision. And we're all human, because there are times I call Sam, I'm like, man, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? But then you got to come back. And coaches, it's okay to go to that place of frustration. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay. But you're going to have to dust them off, and you're going to have to get back up.
Yeah, and misery loves company, so it's real easy to jump in and complain. I read, maybe I've shared this on the show before, like probably about 14 years ago, I read John Gordon's, one of his first books is The No Complaining Rule. It's a great, easy read. If you haven't read it, highly suggest it. I actually implemented it into my life back during January with my church, and removing a few things and abstaining from them. And that was one of them, was I wasn't allowed to complain about anything. And it's just, your life's better. Like, what does complaining really do? It does nothing. I guess it maybe helps you feel better for a minute. We all can vent. I think, TJ, you're saying that a little bit. Like, it's one thing to like vent. Hey, I need to talk to Sarah. I need to get this off my chest. But once you vent and you get that out, then what are we doing to provide solution? And Lisa, I'd be interested in your opinion on this, because I think assistant coaches are great at this. They're great at complaining and stating the obvious. We can't rebound. We can't shoot. We don't like, and if you're a head coach, you're like, great. Yeah, I know that. Well, what's the solution? There's nothing worse. You're in a game and the assistant's telling you everything we did wrong, and it sometimes can be contentious, because a head coach, you'll turn around, you're like, okay, what's your solution? Then they look at you like you're crazy. No, what is your solution? If you're an assistant coach, I almost think coaches should implement a staff rule where when you state a problem, you have to have at least one solution to it. Maybe you need two solutions, because a bunch of problems doesn't do anything for you. It's just you complaining. So yeah, do you see that happen a lot, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst at it, Sam. No, I think we did a good job of. I mean, of course, as assistant coach, there's times where you're like, "Hey, I have a problem," and then I have a couple how I would solve it, but I don't know if that fits you. And obviously, you got to learn your head coach and all that stuff, and they don't want to solve it the way you want to solve it. So sometimes you have to create this environment where you're really open to different outside the box solutions, maybe. But then I think during games, a lot of times if we brought something up, our head coach would be like, "Hey, go tell them. If you think if that's what we need, I agree with you. You go tell them." And kind of empowering the assistant coaches was really helpful this year. And then the one I was thinking of too with all of this was, I think part of this, what we're talking about too, is we want the microwave solution sometimes. We want the fix, we want to fix AAU basketball tomorrow. It's not going to happen. You want to help, one of the troubled kids on your team, change and become a better leader and all those things. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. So you have to continue to invest. You have to know why you're doing it. You have to play the long game and, plant the seeds and trust the process. I think we don't get the solution or the answer we want right away, we pivot too soon sometimes, when it's like, know why you picked it. You're not just picking things off a shelf. Pick the thing that you think can really help you, and do it properly, do it right, and invest in it, whether it's being more positive, whether it's investing in your culture, having hard conversations. I think when sometimes we do the one-offs and we're looking to see if it changed anything, because it's actually really uncomfortable for us, and we need to double down.
I've got another thing that I would challenge coaches to on this, and it's to train yourself to be able to see the other side and the other perspective. And the more you see the other side, or the more you grow yourself in not being the other side, the easier it is to not let the other side bother you. And let me give you an example here. Last night, I really enjoyed watching Jerome Tang's journey. Like, this guy that just comes in with joy, he's having fun, like he's just doing a great job. But I just really enjoyed that journey. All right, I'm watching the game last night. They're playing Michigan State. They're up 5 or 6. They let Michigan State back in on some dumb plays. They got a chance to win it, and the point guard shoots a 30-foot step back, and I'm like, oh gosh. And then he does it again later. And I'm sitting there thinking all these things. You want to know where your mind can go real fast? I'm sitting there because I wanted him to win, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what is he doing? Why is he letting this guy shoot the shot? Have they not worked? Have they not done right? And so I'm like, why? They had a chance to win, and this is what they're going to do. I thought to myself many times. Then I caught myself this, and I said, what's the other side of that story? And the other side of the story is this Noel kid who's like 5'8", he's playing unbelievable, had 20 assists last night or whatever it was. And I thought, you know what? Jerome Tang is probably wouldn't be in this situation if he didn't give that player the freedom he's given him. Right? It's easy after the thought. If they lose that game, it would have been easy for me or anybody else to jump on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, that culture's fun and good until they're loose and they take some bad shots and they lose the game, whatever. So then you jump off the bandwagon. Coach doesn't know what he's doing. He brings a little joy. But then there's the other side to that. Like people will never see, like these guys play loose, they play free, they play hard. Therefore, they're in a situation they probably wouldn't be in if they played the other way. They probably wouldn't be. And so same thing with parents, with people that complain. Look at when you look at that, the best way to not care about those people doing that stuff is for you to change your own mindset. You know what? I'm not going to come from a place of a judgment on other coaches. I'm not going to, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I think if you can fix that within your own spirit, it's easy for you not to care about the other person's spirit of negativity.
Yeah, how do you think you arrive there as a coach?
I think like anything else, Sam, you love to say this, but you practice it. Like what do you need? Like what are the things like hypocrisy, like what are things that coaches can be the greatest hypocrites? We can go praise like being a great teammate and supporting people and telling them what's good. And then we can go behind the closed doors and then we can just bash them. They can't shoot. They can't do whatever. Like there's hypocrisy in that, right? And we all fall to that, no doubt. But do you fight it? And I think a lot of people just allow themselves to fall to it and say, well, because I'm saying it, it's okay. Well, because what? And I found this to be true in my life. Like, I try not to judge anybody else's coaching or whatever, things that are going on, unless I think it has something to do with they're harmful to kids. Then I'll judge it. And then I'll be pretty proactive about it. But everything else, as soon as I don't care about judging anybody else's coaching, the flip of that is true. I don't care about anybody else judging my coaching. But if I'm feeling like I'm judging other people, then I honestly have a high level of care about people judging me.
Yeah, that's good. And one of my final thoughts on this too is just, I think we're really good at playing. I'm saying we as coaches are really good at playing victim roles. And, again, going back to some of the original things we said on this show is pointing fingers, placing blame on everybody but ourselves. And I think we have to model it for people we're leading, that we gotta take ownership, and it's our fault. It's kind of like the old adage, when we win games, praise the players, in the newspapers, put all the credit to them. And when you lose games publicly, take all the ownership of that. Now, behind doors, there may be some more that you need to, address, but I think that's probably a good approach to take as a coach, is to take ownership when things don't go well and to praise and deflect when things are going well.
And the big thing on that is to really believe it, though. I think if it's like loving your players, like you can't check a box, you got to love them. And so if you're going to take ownership, then you got to take ownership. And I think now sometimes it's the popular thing to say that's on me, or I own that, how we showed up or whatever. But do you really? Because what are we going to change? And then you might go back to your team and blame them. So I just think I agree, Sam, and I just want coaches we got to do that inside job first to really believe what we're saying.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up with this. I love one of the quotes we share at PGC, and this goes back to Dina Evans when she was running a lot of the sessions, and she used to always teach this where she was working on self-confidence, and it's like, it's okay to be your biggest critic, only if you're your biggest fan. And I think this pendulum swings both ways with coaches. I meet a lot of coaches who are their biggest fan, but don't think they have anything to work on. That's a problem, right? And you don't want to swing the other way. You don't want to think I suck and I'm no good and I'm not capable of doing it. There's a healthy balance of being your biggest fan, but also being your biggest critic. Like, coaches, where can you get better? Go ahead and write down your list of excuses and find a solution. I think that's a healthy balance. Like, yeah, like there are problems out there, no doubt, but I'm capable of finding the solution. I think that aligns with, yeah, you know what? I'm not nearly as good as I could be, but I'm also working really hard at being good. And I think striking that balance is what good coaches do. They never feel like they've arrived. They don't spend time in pity parties. They don't spend time telling you all the reasons they can't do it, won't do it, and all the things they don't have. They're too busy finding solutions to their problems, too busy finding ways to get around, over, through, or whatever it might be. So coaches, that's our challenge for you, today. No more excuses. Like, throw those out the door. Be a problem solver. Be a part of the solution. And again, you don't have to always be the solution. There might be mentors that can help you find solutions. There might be assistant coaches that can help you find solutions. There might be players that can help you find solutions. You don't have to be a know-it-all. Not everything rides on your shoulders. The only thing that I believe you are responsible for is growing. And the more you know, the better you're going to do. And so, coaches, this offseason, put the excuses to bed and just get better. Just grow and get better. I think you'll be really glad that you did. Stop living in the wrong lanes of overthinking. This is not good enough. They're not good enough, whatever. And just live in the lane of, I'm going to figure it out. And I think you'll be really glad you did. Hey, that is Lisa. That is Sam. I am TJ, and we are the Hardwood Hustle.
Thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Hardwood Hustle, where we believe in the value of a coach. Be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Hardwood_Hustle to stay up to date on the latest episodes and share your thoughts with our coaching community. From the Hardwood Hustle team, thanks again. We can't wait to be with you again next week.